Welcome back to Citizen Extra. Many thanks indeed for staying tuned on whichever platform you're watching us on. YouTube, our website, www.citizentv.co.ke, and on the View Sasa app. And one man who keenly follows all the content here joins me in studio for a bit of a chit-chat. Francis Gashuri, senior political reporter. Welcome.
Thank you.
Karibu. I don't think we've had you on Citizen. Okay, no, you've been on other channels.
Yes.
Yes, you have. Okay.
But at least not this one.
Not this one?
Not the shutdown one.
We laugh after. Let's laugh after we get into the serious matters. Jubilee Party dominated a committee of appointments set to meet today, I believe, to plan the way forward for 2 days of vetting starting tomorrow. Let's talk about the criteria of vetting. This is a process that you've covered before, Gashuri. What can you tell us? Give us some insight.
In 2013, when the first batch of the cabinet secretaries was nominated by the president, they went through a very rigorous process of vetting. Remember, it was an open forum where everybody got an opportunity to know and even get acquainted with who was getting those ministerial flags. And from the onset, people were able to know who looks like a serious performer, who doesn't look like a serious performer. People had their opinions based on what they saw during the vetting. The same situation is expected tomorrow and Friday when the 9 new nominees are going to be vetted. Remember, the old CSs or the retained ones necessarily will not go back for the vetting process.
Although there are those who would have liked to challenge that in court.
Although there are those who would have wanted to challenge that, but the new ones, the fresh ones, must go through the vetting process. The committee is chaired by the Speaker of the National Assembly. Ordinarily, it has about 27 members, but you remember the National Super Alliance members of Parliament declined to participate in that process. So it will be largely a Jubilee affair. Do you expect a bit more vigorous kind of vetting? I highly doubt. Why? Because these are nominees made by the party leader of the Jubilee Party. The vetting committee will be dominated by the Jubilee Party members of Parliament. So largely, you will not expect them to be very hard on the CS nominees. Although there is a criteria,
yes,
the appointments law that was passed in 2000 after the 2010 constitution was enacted provides for the formula that will be used to vet these new CSs. And the new CSs or the CS nominees have already been given like a template, and a series of questions that they are expected to answer in advance, which I hope they have done by now. Return it to the clerk of the National Assembly for onward transmission to the Appointments Committee. That template will guide the members of the committee on the line of questioning. And this is meant to ensure that you don't introduce extra questions or extra issues that are unrelated to the specific docket for which you're being vetted. Basically, it's to try and professionalize the vetting procedure. There are people who ordinarily would want to introduce other issues.
Surprise questions.
Surprise questions or any other issues that you don't expect. So the idea is not to ambush the nominees. The idea is to help them bring out as much as they can and show the public whether they are prepared for the task ahead or not.
So what happens in the case where National Assembly Clerk Michael Sialai says that he's received, what, 1 affidavit, 6 letters? Has that changed? Or is that the information we have as of now?
That's still the information that we have. But you see, at the end of the day, it is the committee to determine whether they will admit the affidavits that have come or not. They can decide not to admit them. So it means the CS nominees will be vetted without any affidavits that are coming in. It's also the work of the committee to decide whether they will admit the people who are, let's say, interested parties in this nomination process or the vetting process or not. They can as well decide not to admit them and proceed with the procedure of vetting these nominees for the committee specifically. The idea basically is to try and have qualified personnel manning these ministries. And since it will be a public, forum, everybody will get an opportunity to see what will be happening. What I don't know exactly whether it will happen is how much leverage those extra people or those outsiders in this process, i.e. non-committee members, will have in the process of this vetting. Remember, this is a parliamentary committee, and the standing orders dictate that any member of parliament can come and attend parliamentary procedures of committees. The only thing that they don't have is voting power. Probably they can raise a question here and there. So you would expect that even members of parliament who are not necessarily members of this committee,
even parliamentary staff could, if they find space, would
not necessarily parliamentary staff, but members of parliament. They can come in and participate in the vetting process as observers, but they don't have a voting power in terms of the final outcome at the committee level, because they are going to prepare a report. once they prepare a report, they're going to submit it to the House for an open debate, plenary session. And the House eventually will decide whether to adopt the committee report, reject it, or amend it.
Would you say that the interest of the public this time around in terms of nominees has been low? If you look at the number of the one affidavit, only 6 letters, how do you compare with 2013?
I think it's a little low, and probably there's a reason. There's a feeling, if you speak to many members of parliament, especially from the opposition, they feel this is it's a rubber stamping exercise. So probably that also explains why there's no much interest per se in what's happening. Remember in 2013, there are some CS nominees who the public felt were not necessarily qualified for the job. But when the report came to the House, the numbers worked, and they all sailed through. So there's also that feeling of, even if I raise issues, even if I raise objections,
what impact will it have?
And probably it will just be, you know, a normal procedure, and the CS nominees will still sail through anyway. Okay. So probably that explains why there is no much interest per se. But it's also important, even if there is no much interest, it's also important for people to participate and observe what's happening, so that they also get acquainted to know who is getting which ministerial position. They also, from their initial presentations, they're able to tell whether this person is fit for the job, prepared for the job or not. Because this is like an interview. Your first impression to your employers, who are the Kenyan population, will give them an idea of the kind of a person you're likely to be. I can imagine some of the nominees have sleepless nights over the last couple of days trying to get ready for this. It will be harrowing, possibly live on TV across the different networks as well. Let's talk about two gentlemen. Third Way Alliance leader, Ekuru Okot, KHRC chairperson George Kegoro. They have written to the Speaker. They want to be asked to make a presentation to discuss general issues on the vetting process. Do you think they'll be given the chance to do so? I think they will. And I don't know exactly what Dr. Ekuru Okot would have to say about these CS nominees. Remember, he's one of the architects of this 2010 constitution. He was the CEO of the committee of experts back then. So he has an idea about probably some of the issues, general issues in terms of the vetting procedure. But specifically, George Kegoro, you remember the Kenya Human Rights Commission has moved to court to stop the vetting procedure of the CS nominees. Why? Because they're saying it has not met the 1/3, 2/3 gender principle. And they're also saying that the list does not have the necessary number of people living with disabilities and youth. So those are some of the issues that I expect him to raise, especially fundamental questions on the constitutionality of the composition of the cabinet lineup that has been that was unveiled by President Uhuru Kenyatta, and whose appointment awaits the parliamentary process of vetting. Let's see how they make their presentations, but from the top of my head, I think what Kegoro and team, especially from the civil society team, will be you can clearly see what is to raise the constitutionality of this of the lineup that has been unveiled, and whether it meets the gender principle rule, the involvement of the youth and people living with disabilities. But you remember the flip side of it is that there has been this persistent question on the implementation of the gender principle law. Remember, when the 11th Parliament was exiting, they had been given a deadline, a 6-month deadline to come up with that law, or else that Parliament be declared unconstitutional. Unfortunately, their term ended before they could implement that. And the argument that has been raised by the parliamentary leadership is that that was the 11th Parliament that was required to do that. So the 12th Parliament will have to start afresh the process of implementing that law and set new deadlines. So it's a very elaborate process that I'm sure the gender activists, FIDA and the rest will be very interested in how. We have hosted them here several times, and they are very unhappy with the way things have been going. Obviously. Finally, Gashuri, tomorrow, Friday, what happens after that? Once the CS nominees have been vetted by the appointments committee, the committee will retreat to prepare a report. Then once they prepare a report, remember the House is still in recess. Yes, until mid-February this month. A couple of days from now. A couple of days to go. So probably by next week, a special session of the House can be called, so that members can come and deliberate on the Appointments Committee's report on the suitability of the CS nominees so that they can be appointed formally by the president and sworn in to take office. There are obviously possibilities. There are various possibilities. There are various scenarios that are likely to play out. The Appointments Committee can say, we are satisfied with all the CS nominees, we find them suitable, so we recommend them for appointment by the president. If each of the committee members will give their views on each of the CS nominees' suitability. If they unanimously agree, then they will prepare a report that is unanimous. If there are issues that they have probably with one CS nominee or two or three or any other, they can prepare a report that says, we recommend the approval of this, but we recommend that the president substitute this because they are not fit for, they are not suitable for appointment as cabinet secretaries. Once they prepare a report and table it in the House, the whole House will now meet in a plenary and deliberate on the committee report. The same procedure happens when any other report is tabled in the House. Members get an opportunity to deliberate, to debate, to air their views, to criticize the committee report, to agree with it, and eventually they can even suggest that let's amend this report and make an alteration here and another alteration elsewhere, or maybe expunge the whole report altogether. So eventually the House will have to vote. The House will have to vote on the suitability of each of the nominees. But by the look of things, still numbers are likely to play out again. Just like the numbers will play out in the committee, at the committee level, the numbers are also likely to play out again at the plenary level. And I anticipate some kind of drama in the House. Remember, the National Super Alliance team has said it does not recognize the legitimacy of the appointing authority, i.e. President Uhuru Kenyatta, who nominated these CS nominees. So you can expect some level of drama when the committee report is being debated in the House. They can even decide to walk out, stage a walkout in protest. They can decide to first rabble-rouse, criticize the report, even the CS nominees, and even the appointing authority, and probably even stage a walkout. So expect a bit of some level of drama. But by and large, I don't see any surprises in terms of the likelihood of any of these CS nominees their names being expunged from the list. Well, what I can see is interesting times ahead. Francis Gashuri, senior political reporter, thank you so much for finding time to be here with us. Time now for a quick break, but when we return, last night the Nairobi County government started a 4-day operation where they'll pick up street children from the Central Business District and start their rehabilitation. Now, the last time this happened was in January 2017 when the Kidero-led county government picked up at least 2,000 street children in the same manner. We want to talk about that approach by the county government and what are the long-lasting solutions on the other side of this break. You're watching Citizen Extra. Stay with us. Thank you.